We have got a loaded show for the people today. Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, talking about these three things. Surprise cut candidates as we get more roster news coming down the wire. We'll also look at that later on in the show, by the way, kind of catching everyone up to speed. Plus, some wide receiver targets after cuts or maybe even trade. If the Browns don't want to risk losing a guy they've got their heart and mind set on, and they want to just send a 2024 third-round pick over to the Giants or Jets' way, that is a possibility. Plus, an interesting rumor floating around. We're right back at the Jimmy Garoppolo talk. I thought we were probably done with it, but it looks like the Niners are going to cut him. And now you beg the question, would Andrew Berry be interested in signing Jimmy G if he wasn't interested in trading for him? So all that coming up on the show, plus a little bit more. But first, let's look at some surprise cut candidates. We started off with the man of the hour in Cleveland, Anthony Schwartz. I think he is safe to make this roster. He's not a lock. I think he's a tier above bubble for one big reason. Andrew Berry is not going to pull the plug on his 2021 third-round draft pick because of preseason drops. I understand it's frustrating, and I think we can all agree that he's not on a good path right now to being an impact player. I'm not here to argue or be Anthony Schwartz's representative. I'm simply telling you, Andrew Berry is not going to punt on this guy because of some preseason drops. That's not going to be the final straw that broke the camel's back for his third-round pick last year. He's going to want to see him play at least in the regular season, and if he can redeem himself. If this regular season is last year he had 10 grabs. If it's a 20 reception for 300 yards and no touchdowns, you can better believe Anthony Schwartz will be in that Denzel Mims type of territory of might he get traded after just 2 seasons. But he ain't getting cut. I hate to disappoint all of you guys that want to see 10 done in Cleveland. I understand it's been frustrating and nauseating at times, but the fact of the matter is he ain't getting cut. But you guys can be Andrew Berry here. It's your time to take over the show a little bit. Should the Browns cut Anthony Schwartz? It's probably frustrating to see a player like Schwartz take a roster spot from someone who has outperformed him in preseason so far. But at the end of the day, he's a third-round pick, and he can ride that for at least 2 years. C for cut or K for keep. Next surprise cut candidate, I'm going to go with Richard LeCounte. Now, I should have prefaced this earlier by saying the nature of surprise cut candidates is it's a surprise, right? It's not supposed to be an obvious name, so bear with me if you think it's ridiculous. I think he's a bubble player now because of how awesome D'Anthony Bell has been. D'Anthony Bell has been this year's Richard LeCounte of the preseason. Delpit and Johnson are locks for this roster. I think the Browns will roll with 4 safeties, which leaves Ronnie Harrison, Richard LeCounte, and D'Anthony Bell. Which one of those 3 guys gets cut if they do stick with 4? Now, might Andrew Berry just go, you know what? All these guys deserve a spot. We'll take 5 safeties this year, and we will steal a roster spot from another position group. That is absolutely a possibility. But keep an eye on our guy from Georgia, LeCounte, to maybe lose his job to the UDFA, D'Anthony Bell. Next surprise cut candidate, Demetric Felton. I believe he is safe. I don't think he's a bubble player anymore. In fact, I think the lack of but how little we've seen of him so far in the preseason maybe speaks to the Browns know he's going to make this roster. They don't need to see much of him here. Now, what's interesting to note is might Demetric Felton make this roster not as a running back, but more so as a receiver? Because Amari Cooper, DPJ, Bell, and I think Schwartz are all going to make this roster. We just saw Javon Wims get cut, okay? And then Jamarcus Bradley got cut not long ago. Maybe Felton sticks on as the 6th wide receiver behind Michael Woods or Mike Harley. Something to watch right there. Now, coming up next on the show, speaking of wide receivers, I think the Browns are going to make a move for a wide receiver, maybe a defensive tackle as well. Might it be both, right? That El Paso Tacos commercial. Why not both? So here are some roster cuts that could be coming down the wire, and the Browns might be pouncing on these guys in the waiver wire. First, though, Help us out by reaching 11,000 subscribers before week 1. We are less than 200 subs away, about 150 to go. So if you haven't subscribed yet and you want to support a fellow Brownie out, go ahead and click that subscribe button. First wide receiver target. This could be from trade or just off the waiver wire, but it's Laviska Shenault Jr. The reason why I bring up Laviska is he might not make this Jags roster, and he would be a notable name on the waiver wire the Browns might pounce on. I mean, he's a career receiver of over 1,000 yards. He's been a bit underwhelming so far for Jacksonville. Now, they also have Christian Kirk on this roster and some other names like Zay Jones, for example. And I think Laviska would be a very intriguing name, okay? I think he is a step up from, no offense, Mike Harley Jr., which is why I'm fearful for some of these players that make this Browns 53-man roster, because the way it works is roster cuts are due by 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. Waiver wires go through on Wednesday. So someone might make this roster, and then 24 hours later, their spot is taken by a bigger name like Laviska Shenault Jr. or someone else we'll look at in just a second. But first, be the judge here, right? I want you guys to decide. Should the Browns be looking to sign or even trade for a wide receiver? If they are trading for one, I'll tell you right now, they're not giving up a key pick. It's going to be a 5th, 6th, not even a 5th most likely, a 6th, a 7th rounder, maybe a 5th for this next guy. But let me know what you think down below. Denzel Mims, a 2nd-round pick out of the University of Baylor back in 2020 for the New York Jets, has been disappointing through 2 years. But man, oh man, did he bring his A game at the right time. So Denzel Mims just 4 days ago requested a trade. He's like, you guys have Elijah Moore, you drafted Garrett Wilson, you signed Corey Davis, you brought back Braxton Berrios. There's no room for me on this roster. Trade me away or cut me so I can flourish somewhere else. And he had an awesome game in this preseason finale against the Giants, going for over 100 yards. And what a time to have his first career NFL touchdown in the preseason or regular season. Denzel Mims, in my opinion, would be a fantastic pickup for the Browns, especially if it's off the waiver wire. Now, the Jets know that they can get something for this guy. So this is a name to keep an eye on to see if he might get moved before cuts are made. What does a 2nd-round bust as a so far go for? Hard to put a stab at it. 5th-round pick? I don't think the Jets are going to get all that much for him. So I think a 5th-rounder for Denzel Mims is pretty enticing, not going to lie. Now, another name we have talked about before on the show is Darius Slayton. The Giants are expected to move on from him some way, shape, or form at this point. They like some of their younger guys. They have not seen the growth from Darius Slayton since his rookie season. In fact, Adam Schefter reporting this just about an hour or so, 2 hours ago, saying Giants have gotten trade inquiries on wide receiver Darius Slayton per source. One name to watch in a busy week of moves. So sort of like Denzel Mims, Darius Slayton is a player that teams know, hey, you're probably going to cut him. Doesn't mean it's like fantasy football, right? If you're not at the top of the waiver wire, you might not get your shot at this guy. It's going to result, it's the draft order. So the Browns don't lose their waiver wire pick because they traded their first to the Texans. That's not how it works. But the Browns have to wait till 13 to get their waiver wire selection in. So maybe they pounce on Slayton or Mims because Darius Slayton is a much more proven receiver. In fact, if you guys watched the Browns-Bears game, I thought the broadcast showed a very important and interesting graphic, which was outside of Amari Cooper, this entire receiving core is very unproven. DPJ has the 2nd most receptions on this team, and he's south of 50. Darius Slayton, last year alone, had 26. In his career, 124. That would make him 2nd on that depth chart. So a name to watch for. Maybe Andrew Berry wants to bring some more veteran presence in for Jacoby Brissett to help him along through 11 weeks of football. Now, we've got more to get to on today's show, so don't go anywhere. But I want to tell you guys about a battle we are having right now over on Rumble. You might have heard of it. It's another video platform service like YouTube. And the Browns Report, we are second on it. I want to be one. I want to take down the Chefs. I want to take down the Chiefs. I don't know if you want to call it revenge for week 1 last year, but if you're still thinking about it, then channel your energy over there by going to rumble.com/Browns Report. Links in the comments and description of today's show. Who remembers Scotty Miller? Producer Jeff does. Scotty Miller was one of those names that, like, Tom Brady probably made him or is going to make him a little bit of coin here because he's done some good things in his young career. A day 3 pick out of Bowling Green for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 739 yards, 4 touchdowns. Listen, you're not going to find household names at this point in the market, but you might find some hidden gems. And Scotty Miller is a player that could step into this wide receiver room and elevate it, right? I don't think this team is worse with Scotty Miller. So if he's out on the waiver wire because the Bucs, I mean, let me just put some names your way right now. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, Russell Gage. 4 guys right there that are locks to make this roster. Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson. Keep an eye on for them. Maybe they are acquisitions from the waiver wire for the Browns. Now, I wouldn't say the best for last, but an old drum we have been beating for a while. You guys know where I stand on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. So next up, we will kind of break down whether or not the Browns will look into, should they or will they, 2 very different words, of acquiring Jimmy G if he is cut by the San Francisco 49ers. Now, let's set the stage a little bit here. Matt Barrows, a reporter for the 49ers, tweeting out a couple of days ago, almost a week at this point, saying John Lynch had a long answer. So let me give some more background here. John Lynch was on some studio set before the Niners preseason game, and Tom Tolbert asked him if what the timeline looks like when the 49ers would release Jimmy Garoppolo if there's no trade. However, his first words were, yeah, you know, I think we're getting pretty close. Getting pretty close to releasing Jimmy G. Now, this is one thing I want to get across here. The Niners have one big goal. They do not want to play Jimmy Garoppolo week 2 when San Francisco takes on Seattle. Because Jimmy G, if you don't think he's an upgrade from Brissett, that's fine. He's absolutely an upgrade from Drew Lock or Geno Smith. So they might be holding on to him as long as possible to reduce the amount of time he has with the Seahawks to get accustomed to their playbook. Now, Brad Stainbrook, who's been doing a great job of keeping up with all the Browns cuts and moves and all that good stuff, tweeting this out the other day. Not saying Jacoby played terrible following that Bears game, but Browns should keep a close eye on Jimmy G's situation in San Francisco. Some people in Berea think he'll be released. If so, will Cleveland call? At this point, I would stick with Jacoby Brissett and Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs has shown he can be the backup quarterback, right? If he needs to come in at any point for Jacoby Brissett, I'm not all that concerned about it anymore. Now, I am curious to know this. Has this all been a part of Andrew Berry's plan, right? While we over here are maybe a little bit impatient and we want things to happen throughout the offseason, maybe Andrew Berry goes, you know what? I knew no one was going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. And if he was released because the Niners, they're not going to pay him $24 million to be the backup, that is when I will pounce. Now, the flip side of that is you waited a long time to bring in your starting quarterback, giving him less time in the preseason to learn the playbook, the offense, build some chemistry. That could be an issue. Now, if all along Andrew Berry goes, I never wanted to trade for Jimmy G because I didn't want to give up a pick for him, but if he's a free agent, yeah, I'll go sign him. I think they should stick with Brissett at this point. You've gone this far in the preseason with him. Why kind of tear it all down and give it to Garoppolo and start from scratch at QB and add more drama to this locker room? I'd rather stick with Brissett at this point. If we had this conversation 2 weeks ago, which we did, things are different. But now it's August 29th. The regular season is less than 2 weeks away. Roll with number 7, okay? And 15. Shout out to number 15, Josh Dobbs. Now, before we get you guys on your way and out of here, I need you all to help me settle an office debate we had here at Chat Sports. What do you call this? Coke, soda, or pop? I'm a soda guy. I don't buy into... I know it's very regional, and even then, there's people in those regions that call something different. Coke is a very southern thing, where it's not just... I'm not just referring to the actual brand of Coca-Cola. They just call all soda in the South Coke. I call it soda, so I'm putting an S for soda. Let me know what you call it in the comments. Producer Jeff saving my tail here. One last thing before I forget to get on out of here this time. These are just the latest roster moves made. Brad Stainbrook tweeted this out. Just wanted to relay it to you guys. All the moves that have been made so far. And in fact, while we're filming live, I'll open Twitter to make sure there's nothing else. But Odom, the defensive end who tore his ACL, he is on IR. Glenn Logan, UDFA out of LSU, defensive tackle, waived along with Jamarcus Bradley, Javonte Moffitt, Ben Petrula, Curtis Weaver, and then Javon Wims. There's some lingo in the, because he's a vet, he gets terminated. He doesn't get waived, which means he's a free agent immediately, as opposed to the other guys who go through the waiver wire process. So that's where the difference is right there. But the Browns are down to 73 players now. They've got to cut 19 more because Deshaun Watson won't count for a roster spot. He'll go to the suspended list. So I guess 20 more, whatever the math is. Regardless, once the roster drops, once we get more cuts in here, we'll be breaking it down on the channel, which is why you got to be subscribed.